The Reality Podcast. Real conversations about life, love, and business. With me, Jason Rhee. This is The Reality. Welcome to another episode of The Reality Podcast. I am here with Mihoko Chida, who is shipped here freshly from Bangkok, Thailand. Hello, Mihoko Chida.
I took an airplane, like normal humans.
Miho, can I call you Miho?
Sure.
You prefer Miho or are you back to Mihoko?
No, I think certain people call me Miho and certain people call me Mihoko.
Okay, Mihoko.
Doesn't matter, though. I don't
Miho.
care.
I'm going to call her Miho. That's how I know
because that's
Miho.
how you know me.
Now,
Yes.
She is an elementary school principal at Verso International School in Bangkok, Thailand. As an, I'm not going to say actual educator because I call myself an educator, but you're an actual educator. Because you actually...
Everyone is an educator.
Is everybody an educator?
Well, everybody tries to be. Some people probably shouldn't.
Well, thank you for being here.
Of course. I'm excited. It's my first podcast.
Yes.
It's been my lifelong dream.
Well, the reason I want to connect that back is because if it is really your lifelong dream, I have to say, you also helped one of my lifelong dreams come true because you and Sue hired me to do a charity event in 2009.
That was 2009?
It was. I looked up the flyer.
That's a long time ago.
I know, but we actually met in 2008.
Wow, you did some research.
Well, I kind of just did some light research because I'm an educator.
I'm very impressed as a fellow educator.
Thank
I'm
you.
impressed with your research
But also,
skills.
did we had met through? I essentially won you in my breakup.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, one loss. That's up to whoever to decide that. I
Did
won.
you win?
You may have
Did
lost.
you win? Oh, So I met Miho through one of my ex-boyfriends.
Yes.
And I was lucky enough to maintain my friendship with you, which is rare. And I think your life is so fascinating because you essentially, you were teaching here in the States?
Yes. So I taught at a public school. In the
public school.
In a low socioeconomic area.
Where was that?
In Garden Grove.
Garden Grove. That's where I
Yes.
was born.
No way.
Well, Anaheim. But I lived in Garden Grove up until I was younger. It's close.
It's close. It's still
close.
Orange County. Inland Orange County.
It was all near the Lee
It's
sandwich.
the non-bougie Orange County.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yes.
It's the Asian. It was the immigrant Orange County.
So I taught in Garden Grove, but before that I taught, my first year of teaching was actually in the Crenshaw area.
Oh, okay.
So I worked in LA Unified for a year.
Ooh, LA Unified.
It was a very interesting year.
That is very interesting. I always think of what was that Johnny Depp show where he sneaks into school?
21 Jump Street?
Yeah, that's when I think of LA Unified. Was that the experience?
Yeah, but when I think 21 Jump Street, I think Channing Tatum now.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. Get with the program.
Yeah.
It's changed.
I mean, but are we allowed to like him anymore? Isn't he canceled?
Channing Tatum?
I think he's canceled.
He's less canceled than Johnny Depp.
No, Johnny Depp is not canceled. He's re-evangelized himself.
That's questionable.
Oh, are you Team Amber Heard?
I'm team nobody. That trial was a disaster.
It was terrible.
It was really sad.
But you know who won in that trial? That lawyer, Johnny Depp's attorney.
Oh, really?
I mean, she.
Well, yeah, for sure.
She won, but she
Yes.
also got all of the good press.
I don't think anyone won there.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty embarrassing.
I mean, not that we find it funny to be abused. That's not funny.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But it was just every time you watched the news, it just got worse.
It was
Yeah,
terrible.
yes.
That's so really another situation
Yes.
where nobody wins.
Nobody is a winner there. Nobody is a winner.
Okay, so going back.
But we're not Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
No, we're
yes,
not.
Yes.
Well, I mean,
we're more winners.
We are winners.
More winning than them.
True.
Yes.
True.
Yes.
So what made you decide to, and essentially what was the first opportunity that you got out of teaching in the States?
So I think, working in a public school is not easy.
Yeah.
So I think, yesterday.
Okay, the sirens also coincidentally right at the public school mention is so appropriate.
That's not a sound effect that you added.
That's
to
Noah.
make
He's mixed mastering.
Gosh, Noah, you're amazing.
Yeah, I gotta put in the sound effects too.
No, teaching at a public school, the other day I was at Target, back to school stuff's already in the stores.
Shit.
And I saw somebody looking through the spiral notebooks because they go on sale And I used to go and buy them, and they would always have like a limit of 10, but I had 36 students. So I'd have to like go and buy 10, then go buy another 10, and go buy another 10. That's what public school teachers do. We buy our own things.
Yes. So I watched an episode of What Would You Do? Where, do you remember that show?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great show if you haven't
Yes.
seen it. We're not sponsored by them, but great show.
But you can call if you would like to be sponsored.
If
Sponsored.
John Kionis would love to be on the podcast. But basically it's a show where they put people in life situations and then they like can camera you to see if you react. And there was
Yes.
one where like a school teacher didn't have enough money to buy what was in their
Yes.
carts, and then they started taking out like their milk and eggs and
Yes.
seeing if other people would help. Has that ever happened to you?
Have I sacrificed my own food to buy notebooks for students?
That sounds like a no.
No.
That sounds like a no.
No. But everything in the classroom I bought myself.
Wow.
Yeah. I had 36 students, and I think I had enough textbooks. But
That's
I've been in
insane.
situations where we didn't have enough textbooks.
So I'm trying to think about, because I am a child of public school.
So am I.
And if I remember correctly, I don't remember ever having to share my books, but I can't. Maybe I've also blackened out some of those memories.
Well, and the other thing, too, is in all fairness, textbooks are probably not the best tool to use in a
Yeah.
classroom. So I think it gave me permission to not use the textbook, so you can
Yeah.
be creative and do other things than read one chapter out of a novel in your textbook for language arts.
So what got you into teaching in general? Just what was your first job?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Okay.
So I had to do
As you are a listener of the podcast.
I am a devoted listener to the podcast. I did have to think about it. My first job, and I don't think this job exists anymore, is I worked at a travel agency.
Oh, they do exist.
Okay, so I was in charge of filing all the brochures for all the cruises and all the hotels.
Exist anymore. That doesn't exist anymore.
And so I had to, like, when I started, it was this like giant table and bookshelves of flyers.
Like the collateral, the sales collateral. Like
Is that what it's called
Yeah,
in
it's
the
like
biz?
it's like the brochure, like the
Yes.
pamphlet,
Yes.
the
Yes.
guide, the venue
Yes.
guide. Yeah.
So then I had to organize and file all those, and then take out all the expired ones because those were like expired.
Yes. Yeah. They're
And then
seasonal.
I remember I made all the files for all by continent.
Ooh, I love this.
Alphabetical order by
Also, is
country.
this a job interview?
Yeah, I would love to help anyone else who would need some organizational systems in their business.
She's talking about me, everybody. She's talking about me. Okay, wait. So your first job was at a travel agency.
Yes,
but
that was
was
like high school.
Was education something that you just?
I always wanted to be a teacher.
You always wanted to
Like
be a teacher.
a lot of kids do. Like I always say this, like, you know, when you're a kid, I don't like to ask this question of kids, but lots of times adults ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
And in school, you learn about community members. You know, there's firefighters, there's lawyers, there's doctors. But we know
Wedding
that
planners.
we didn't learn about wedding planners.
I know we should have been.
Think about all your friends and all their jobs.
Yeah.
You didn't learn about any of those jobs.
No, not at all.
You didn't learn about any of that. And so I think most people
Oh, I see.
start out saying, I want to be a firefighter or
I
a
did.
baker.
That was actually what I wanted to be
Right.
when I was like, yeah.
And most people grow out of it. And I
you
never
did
did.
not.
I just wanted to always be an educator.
The glamorous life of educating and buying school supplies.
Yeah, it's not that. Yeah. Well, I love school supplies.
I do love. Okay, so I was a terrible student academically, but like participation wise, I crushed it.
Okay, I was the opposite. I was very quiet in school.
My citizenship was like amazing. It was my grades were.
Yeah, my penmanship was fantastic, but I did not socialize, and I was very, very quiet. in
Literally
elementary
the
school.
opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Together we would have made like the perfect student.
The perfect student.
Yeah.
The model minority.
Now we're just trying. Yeah.
Terrible.
I know.
terrible.
Now
Okay.
we're just half of a model minority.
I mean, I think now I've definitely gone the complete
Yeah,
other way.
for sure. For
No.
sure. No one would describe me as quiet
But
now.
back to school shopping was so fun and dangerous, and because I would
Yes.
always want the newest thing.
Yes. Newest Trapper Keeper.
JanSport, I would get the JanSport, like the newest JanSport, and
your
Costco used to
parents,
start.
they were nice.
They started. Costco started carrying them at one point.
Oh, yes, I remember.
So it was aggressive. Like you had
Yes.
to go there, and you had to,
Yes.
if you didn't get the right
Yes.
one, if you didn't get there early,
Yes.
you got the shitty color.
Well, and you wanted the ones with like the leather
Yes,
support.
on the
Yes,
bottom.
yes.
Because I also
So your textbooks don't break the backpack.
I never used a locker, which is also why I think I'm short.
What?
Because I never used my locker because I didn't want to have to go on like all the way to the boonies to get my. Is boonies also allowed? Am I allowed to say boonies? Is that canceled?
I don't know. I don't live in this country.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Okay, so like, when your like locker is just far and you have like barely any time, and I was too busy chatting and probably snacking.
Yes.
That I just kept all of my books in my backpack. So I had like a giant like 500-pound backpack, which I think stunted my growth.
In high school.
Middle school to high school.
Okay.
I think every grade, to be honest. I also failed PE.
PE was the only class I never got an A in.
I failed it.
Like, no, I had a really bad attitude. I dressed out every day.
I never dressed out.
I dressed out every day and actually participated in like the physical fitness test. I was okay, but I could never get a B. I could never get it higher than a B.
Why would you not get in?
I had a really bad attitude.
Oh.
It was the only class I had a bad attitude in high school.
Like what? Like, give me an example.
So we used to, because I grew up I went to high school in Huntington Beach.
Okay.
And so we used to and the school was really close to the beach. So during PE, we would have to go and run to the beach and then back. I'd just go and sit on a park bench and wait for people to come back.
That was like me in the mile.
Well, first of all, looking back now as an educator, I really question how come there weren't any adults with us. Like, they let a bunch of high school kids run to the beach and back.
That's true.
See, because now I'm an educator, I'm like, well, that's not safe. Child protection. You don't know who's lurking around, going to kidnap a kid.
That's true.
Yeah, the world has changed.
The world has changed. But that's also, I don't know. I feel like that's a different, not that violence didn't exist at that time, but it does feel like a different time.
But I also would worry about, like, we all know that teenagers don't make the best choices. So for me, I'd be like, well, what are you all going to go do in the park?
So many things.
Well, I was just sitting there waiting for the kids to come back so I can rejoin the group. I wasn't doing anything fun or cool.
But now you're doing the cool, fun things.
Sure.
So educator, teacher.
Yes.
And then what was the opportunity that got you out of the country?
So I always wanted to work in public schools as well because I believe that public schools are the way the world becomes a better place. And I do believe that education is the way we make the world a better place. But public schools are hard to grow as an educator. We didn't get any professional development money. We did, but it was all like within the district. And, it was like my 9th year and I was feeling like I needed a change. And then I found out that there's all these international schools all around the world that do exactly what we're doing here in America, but with
resources?
Yes, and support. Yes. So I thought it would be a great opportunity, and it was. It was a great. I had so much professional development, once I moved overseas.
And so, what was the first school that you did overseas?
So the first school I worked at was a school called Nishimachi International School, and that's in Tokyo. And I was there for, I think, 8 years. And so I went there as a classroom teacher, and I left as a elementary school principal.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And then after that, you went to?
Then I moved to Bangkok. So that's where I am now.
And you essentially started in that school when it was just a groundbreaking, essentially.
So the school in Bangkok, So I came onto the team. They brought on a team a year before the school actually opened to students.
Wow.
So
yes. you are a performer. You're an actor. If you go on the website and find their film.
Yes, our promo video.
Yeah.
Yes.
You are a student.
No, I'm not playing a student. I'm not even playing a teacher. It's just my voice.
No, but wasn't there also a video thing where you were in a backpack moment?
Oh, that was that was a video to, COVID precautions video.
Oh, copy. That's right. That's right. Okay, it was like a COVID precautions video.
Yeah, like this is how you're supposed to enter the school to be safe. That was me.
That's kind of fun to be a part of, no? Well, not fun,
well, it's
but
not like there's
in a
a
shitty
choice.
situation, it's fun.
Yeah, but it's not a choice. We're not going to we were going to hire professional actors for the school video.
And then they got the quote.
Well, yeah, and we thought, why are we hiring? So we actually used our real kids, which most schools do.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
I'm actually also a student model in the Santiago Canyon College's website and some of their collateral. I don't know if it's still there, but I played an Asian student.
What were your qualifications to play an Asian student?
I was an Asian student.
Were you there at the school?
Yes, I was.
Oh. That's funny because you know what? We do that even now with international schools. We'll be like, okay, we need some more diversity in this video, in this shot. We'll look for kids who are of different backgrounds to make sure, yes.
Yeah, that's...
to represent that.
So, okay, kind of speaking on diversity then.
Yes.
Is during the 2020 surge of like BLM and everything.
Yes.
What was that experience like being out of the country
Yes. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Holy cow, Jason. You're a pro. No, that's a great question. I think all American politics it's hard. It's been hard to live overseas and sort of represent America for the last last decade.
Have you been tough? You're like, no, I'm locally. I'm from Bangkok.
Yeah, the last 10 years hasn't been great. It's almost because, you work with a lot of Australians and, people from England, all sorts of people. And it's almost like, well, what do you think about what's happening in America? Like anything that comes up in the news. So it is, I think I've kind of gone through my own journey living overseas.
Yeah.
And how connected I am to what's happening in America.
Yeah.
So I think it's very easy to turn the TV off or not check CNN and sort of live in the country that you're living in, which you should do, and be aware of what's happening in that country.
Yeah.
But I think that 2020 was kind of like, I think the whole Trump time too, it was like I couldn't not be engaged.
Yeah.
Right? I think when Trump was elected, it was a real wake-up call to me because I grew up in California.
Yeah.
Pretty diverse, liberal thinking. I went to a liberal arts school. I went to Occidental, which is like, that's where Obama went. And I thought everybody thought that way. So my Facebook feed, I had no idea that was going to happen. And so then when it happened, and people were like, how could that happen? And everybody was talking about how everybody's in their own like tunnel and I was like, oh, I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think, in 2020, especially with the pandemic and we were all working from home, I really tried to make it a part of my daily routine to make sure I knew what was happening in the U.S.
Yeah.
And be engaged, but you're sort of removed from it.
Yeah.
You can always, it's a privilege because you can always turn it off and not pay attention if you don't want to.
Do you think that the conversations now about diversity, equity, inclusion, now there's also belonging.
Yes.
And there's also accessibility.
Yes.
Are those things that existed in Bangkok before, you think? Or in your school or in your group, is that stuff that's already been conversation or is that something that's not there yet?
No, I think international schools are more aware of the need for diversity.
Yeah.
So the same language that you're hearing in schools here about having to teach anti-racism, having to teach a different type of history, teach how do you foster your own cultural identity. I think that's becoming more and more valued in the international schools. You see diversion, inclusion experts, there's those roles now at different companies.
D&Is.
Yeah. That's becoming more prevalent in the international schools as well.
Interesting.
Which is interesting because international schools are very culturally diverse, right?
Yeah.
So even if, my school in Tokyo, we did have a lot of Japanese students on paper, but they weren't. They were Japanese, lived overseas and now back in Japan. My school, Thailand, same thing. We have a lot of kids who are half Thai or Thai but grew up in another country or their parents grew up in another country. So I think the understanding that culture is sort of more nuanced than we used to think it was is becoming more prevalent in international schools. And it's pretty late, I think, for international schools.
Well, I don't know. I also think that travel is linked with culture.
Yes.
And I think the more of that you experience in your life, the more I think diverse you get as just as a person. So a lot of these experiences that I think people here in the States or even me personally, I didn't start traveling internationally until recently, and now I've kind of caught that bug where I want to learn about even my own culture. I felt like I got into being proud of being Asian so late in my life. Because as you mentioned, on your feed, in your tunnel, my tunnel, I had not realized that I was very much linked to the problematic tunnel too, because a lot of my friends and people that I grew up with were all from the core city that is, Trump-toting, American flag on their lawn.
Yes.
And so do you think travel should start at a certain age in your life? When's the early, when did you start traveling? And because you travel outside of the school.
Yes.
You also travel every year. You go somewhere every year.
Before the pandemic.
Okay.
Yes.
She did it all through the pandemic, everybody. She is patient zero.
No, I am not patient zero. Although my last trip before it all shut down was to Taiwan, but it was really it was in February of 2020. So I was cutting it pretty close there.
I mean, your life is fascinating to me because I feel like you get to experience so much, but I also know that you do a lot of work.
Well, I think that people always say, like, for people who living overseas, like, oh, your life is so fascinating. You have such an adventurous spirit.
Yeah.
But I don't see it that way at all. I do, like, everything that I would do here, or what a grown adult is supposed to do. I don't always do it.
Yeah.
But I think all that is the same. I just do it in another country, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there are some challenges that come with living overseas, which the pandemic definitely brought out. But I think that I do think that traveling, is a way to learn more about yourself, more about your culture. But so obviously the international schools I work at, they're private schools.
Yeah.
So they're very affluent.
Got that money.
They have money.
Yeah.
And so they travel a lot. The kids are well traveled, right? And so my school in Tokyo, this is before the pandemic, every holiday break, if because you either leave on the Friday night or the Saturday morning, right?
Yeah,
so anytime you went to the airport, you would run into people at the airport.
Oh, got it.
So people are well traveled in these communities. But I wouldn't say that they have a better understanding of their own culture or the way culture plays a role in their beliefs. I think you have to explicitly learn about that and think about it.
Just like, oh God, like you have to make a conscious choice.
Yes.
Well, I remember that there was also like a surge of when English teachers were being hired from the States to go to Korea.
Yes.
I remember that was like a very big thing at one point, and all international schools were kind of like hungry for non-Asian looking English speakers.
Yes.
Is that still a thing?
I think that that's becoming, I hope that's less of a thing.
Yeah.
So one thing is kind of controversial in the international world. Ooh, it's probably not that controversial. But, well, it is actually. So in the U.S., you would never do this. But in the international world, it's pretty okay for you to ask your ethnic background and your marital status. Like you put that on your resume because it impacts the visa you can get, right? So schools in the EU want EU passports because it's easier to bring people into the country.
Yeah.
And some countries easier to bring people into the country. So it's pretty common. Like when I'm looking at resumes, I'm like, ooh, that's going to be a hard. I mean, I better go check with HR to see if that's going to be a hard passport to get into Thailand, right?
Got it.
So it is part of international schools to ask those kinds of questions.
Yeah.
But one thing that's becoming the controversy now is native English speakers, the term. So you see advertisements for English teachers at various types of international schools. So any advice I have for anybody looking into international schools is like research the international schools because they're not all created the same, right? But they will say we're looking for a native English speaker. So the question is, who's a native English speaker?
Yeah,
is that an American accent?
Yeah.
Or British accent, which are the two accents that people want. So people will say to me,
Got it.
oh, it's great, you sound Californian, you sound American.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, what's up, dude?
Yeah. What up? No, I don't. Actually, I know I sound Californian.
Yeah.
But that's the accent that's the native English that we want to hear.
So that's what's more profitable.
Yes.
Because it sounds like somebody who's from the area
Correct.
teaching that.
Yes.
And are you teaching your students international things like
curriculum?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So our curriculum is based off American standards. So the Common Core.
So nothing. You're teaching them nothing.
Not true. American schools, everybody, shits on them, but there's a lot of great things happening in
The
America.
Crucible. The Crucible?
No.
That's all I remember.
No.
I was a bad student, though. Again, I'm a bad example.
Well, and education has changed a lot since we went to school.
How dare you?
Well, we're old.
We have electricity now.
And whiteboards instead of chalkboards?
Do you have a digital board?
Oh, those came and went in schools.
Oh, they're gone.
Yes. Now we have screens and use
copy.
a computer.
Got it.
Yes. But I think that, but the only curriculum that we don't use exactly the same is social studies. Obviously, it doesn't matter to a kid in Thailand about colonial America. It shouldn't be the only American history we teach in American schools either, but I think social studies with regards to the concepts, like the role that geography plays or the way how economics works, that's similar, but we don't use the context of America.
Got it. Okay. Well, we're going to take a short break, but I have a lot more questions for you.
Okay.
So stay tuned. Oh, hi there. Would you like your commercial on the Reality Podcast? Please make sure to do it with me. Oh, that's not good.
Jason Rhee.
I was waiting for that.
Because you said it in the same exact way.
Please give me your money so I could advertise your business. Commercial. Here. Ad. Do. Everyone, thank you for coming back to the Reality Podcast.
You don't have a jingle that brings us back
Excuse me.
in?
No. Are you going to make one for me?
No, that's not my background. I'm an educator. We don't really have a lot of skills.
Do-da-do-do-ba. I'm loving it. Oh, I'm going to get sued.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah.
How about where you won't get a lemon? I wouldn't have got a lemon.
No.
Okay, let's get back to this
Nice
hard-hitting
try.
interview.
Nice try. Yeah, I heard you said you were going to Diane Sawyer me.
Or Gail you. I want to Gail you.
Oh, Gail is such a compassionate interviewer.
She's a great interviewer.
But she learned from Oprah, though.
She did. I love them. Do you think they're together?
Shouldn't matter.
That's a great response.
Yeah.
Shouldn't matter.
And it's possible for two people that be in a platonic friendship for a long time.
True, but I would like to know.
Maybe they're a throuple.
Oh, with Stedman?
Stedman?
Stedman. Is he?
No. They can do whatever they want.
Honestly, they can. I mean, she can literally do whatever she wants.
She literally can.
Okay.
Yeah. And she's really not looking for our approval. If you
She is also not my sponsor.
But if she's interested, call below. I don't know if there's going to be a number, but
No, we don't have the budget for that. We don't have the budget for any text on that.
hold up a sign.
Okay, so
Okay.
is there, we were kind of talking before we started
Yes.
recording today. And
Yes.
so right now,
Yes.
after doing, God knows what during the pandemic with teaching
Yes.
and how that whole nightmare was for you,
Yeah.
you're burned out.
Yes. If you look up the definition of burnout, I fit every single thing on that bullet point list.
What are the definitions of burnout?
Well, now you're putting me on the spot.
Okay, let me
No,
do
but
that.
it's like, I'm lethargic, unmotivated.
Ooh, 5 stages of burnout.
Okay, tell me what they are.
The honeymoon phase. So like a honeymoon phase in a marriage, this stage comes with energy and optimism. Oh, this is a weird list. Hold on. Oh, it's too long. It's too
Yeah.
long. Oh, wait, no, here we go.
Okay.
The honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
Like the honeymoon phase in a marriage, this stage comes with the energy and optimism. Whether it's starting a new job or tackling a new task, it's common experience satisfaction that
Okay.
leads to periods of productivity and the ability to tap into your creative side.
Sure.
Onset of stress phase. I need to learn how to read, apparently.
Okay. I'm an educator.
Actually, you should have read this. The honeymoon phase dwindles and you begin to experience stress. Not every second of the day is stressful, but there are more frequent times when stress takes over.
Okay.
As this stage begins, take notice of any physical or mental signs. You may start to lose focus. Oh my God, that's me right now.
Yeah.
Well, no, that was me like 6 months ago.
Okay.
The chronic stress phase is you'll reach a point where the stress becomes more persistent
Yes.
or chronic.
Okay.
As the pressure mounts, the stress is likely to consistently affect your work. Examples include feelings of apathy, not
Yes.
completing work on time, being late for work, or procrastinating during tasks.
Okay. So I think, so the problem with all these lists that I have,
Yeah.
okay, is that, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I don't think that the stress of my job has ever really impacted the quality of work. Like I managed to get
Me
things.
too.
I managed to get things done because I'm a people pleaser.
Oh, me
right?
too.
Right?
Me too.
Yes. And so, and I really defined a lot of my identity as a responsible human being. Because you've known me for a long time.
Yeah.
I've always been I've been responsible.
Yes. Well, you've been responsible, but what's interesting is there's like a level of not even black sheep, but I would say that you're still kind of like a badass in the sense that you, as somebody who is still very responsible, you are not doing like a traditional path of responsibility.
Okay. Yeah, okay, sure. Some people, yes, okay, fine. Yes.
Right? Because you live
I'm a woman in my 40s.
Okay.
I'm unmarried. I don't have children. And I don't own property. I don't own a car.
Yeah.
And I live overseas. So yes, in the grand scheme of things, it's just that
Did this add to your stress?
No, I think I think I found a lifestyle that really
Yeah.
appeals to me. That
I love that. I love
Yeah.
my lifestyle.
Yeah, I love it.
But it is stressful.
it is stressful, and the pandemic didn't help in terms of, this feelings of isolation and loneliness. But I think the thing about burnout for me and stress is this teaching has always been stressful.
Yeah.
Always been stressful from day one. Every teacher is stressed. I mean, you look at the rates of people who quit after their first year, after 3 years in. Teachers, it's a hard job.
I mean, the idea of having to stand up in front of a classroom of younger kids gives me flashbacks of being bullied. So I don't know if that's something that I think that would already give me social anxiety as it is.
Right.
But then on top of that, I have to now teach you something.
Well, and you're responsible for their well-being for the time they're in your space, right?
Yeah.
So you're not just responsible for the knowledge that they're supposed to acquire in the time that you work with them.
Yeah.
But you're really helping them understand the world around them, helping them communicate with each other. Negotiating friendships. I feel like a therapist most times when I'm with kids, what happened then? What happened then? Now you tell him how it felt when he said that,
What grade are you teaching?
So I don't teach now.
Oh, that's right. You're a principal.
Yeah. So I don't, and that's been interesting too, because I think that as a leader, I've always taken on the approach of the way I would approach a classroom is the way I approach the team that I work with. So every child is different in a classroom. They come to us with different needs, different strengths, different interests, different motivations, different
homes.
backgrounds. Exactly. And every team I've worked with, I try to, anytime I'm stuck and I'm like, I don't know what I would do in this situation. How should I talk to this person about, whatever it is? I always think about how I would work with that person if they were if it was like a student situation, And of course, it's different when, they're adults and they're getting paid to do their jobs. So you have to play, you have to be a manager and a leader. And that's
who are those people that you...
Well, remember we said there's certain things we wouldn't talk about. No, I'm kidding. No, but I think the pandemic's been hard on every educator, somebody's chronically late. They can be chronically late because they're depressed because they live thousands and thousands of miles away from any support network.
Yeah.
And, most of the time international schools are a support network for people who are in that community, but it's been really hard with a new school and a pandemic.
Yeah.
So our school doesn't have the same community feel as the school I worked at in Tokyo that was around for 70 years.
Got it.
Right?
Because also everybody kind of started...
Yeah. Yeah. We all, the pandemic in August of 22 is when we opened up to students. Some of our teachers weren't even in the country.
Wow.
Because,
they were all just
with
Zooming
COVID,
in.
they couldn't come in. And the visa, because Thailand shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you get people in the country and to a bunch of international teachers who are used to going home every Christmas or every summer to tell them you can't leave.
Yeah.
It was really hard. And then if you have a family that has its own challenges, but if you're alone, and I had moved there, it had been 6 months when the pandemic hit. So I was really what? Why you start to question why am I living in Bangkok working from my apartment and you can't enjoy any of the benefits that you get from living overseas which is travel and experiencing a different culture so I think I don't even know what we were talking about.
Well, just kind of where you're at right now mentally. I think.
Burnt out.
Yeah, you're burnt out.
Yeah, so I like to call myself a high functioning burnt out human being.
Yeah. I think a lot of our listeners, we all feel that.
Yes. And I think the difference with me, too, is that, I became a teacher when I was, straight out of undergrad, I went to grad school, and then I went straight into teaching. So I never had a break.
You never had a wild,
era of time?
Yeah.
No.
I call it my hoe phase.
No, I didn't think I had a
My hoe phase actually never ended. Just kidding.
I wish I had a hoe phase.
When it's bad girls clubbing it, fighting in the clubs,
Yeah, no, I wasn't fighting in any clubs.
Yeah.
I was probably...
That's why you're the principal.
I was probably there at the clubs and going, Jason, we have to go. Let's go smoke. Cigarettes, people, cigarettes. And then
I used to smoke cigarettes.
And then we used to joke around, and then you'd be like, I don't know why I was so mad. Because I don't know.
As I'm wiping my tears away. My tequila tears.
And we go get pizza. We'd get a slice of pizza.
I would never eat pizza. Anyways, moving on. Okay, what do you think is... Okay, so
burnout, yes.
With burnout, what are you doing right now? You obviously traveled back here.
Yes. Yes.
So is there like a plan to help figuring out the burning out thing? Like, are there things that you do to kind of unplug when you are feeling so much stress and anxiety?
I think the reason why I know I'm burnt out and it's time for me to take a little bit of a break from my career in education is that I don't have the energy to do those self-help things that I did before.
What were they?
So I think, being a principal's being any kind of leader.
I don't even understand what a principal honestly does other than like walk around like.
Oh, it's crazy. Every time I used to say, the minute you leave your office, anybody you walk into needs something from you. So it could be, sign this receipt. We bought lettuce for the caterpillars in our classroom. We need to get reimbursed. So it goes from that. I walk 10 steps and it's like, oh, so-and-so is acting up again. Can you just check with them? Like, I know you talked to them last time. They just need to have a conversation. So I'm talking to a kid, teachers coming up to me and saying, oh, my cat's really ill. I'm really like, my brain is not in the right space. What can I do? Can I go home early? Well, any teacher that goes home or is not in school that day, the class is to be covered.
Yeah, by a substitute teacher.
Right. So then I have to find coverage or make sure someone.
Which was movie day. Yeah. No, is that not? Only public schools?
You really hope that, educators take the time to leave some sub-plans, but sometimes
Clearly
they don't.
I was educated correctly.
Well, emergencies happen. So, and I totally understand, the need to put on a video. Like the last day of school, I was walking around. This is just a couple of weeks ago, and the kids were doing something. This is like the kids were 5 years old, and I'm like thinking, wow, like you actually trying to do something on the last day of school. Why not just play a movie and eat potato chips? That's okay.
Yeah.
She's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah.
What were they doing?
They were doing some letter activity. It was still fun. It's 5-year-old. It's not like they were doing worksheets, but
that sounds grueling.
Worksheets?
Letters. Oh.
I think it was the letter G.
So you are burned out.
Burnt out.
Do you have an idea of what's next for you yet?
Something not in a school.
Yeah.
I think, this is why I get nervous about talking about it, is because I don't want people to think that I'm not, or anyone to think that I'm not passionate about the plight of education, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know this, I'm also working on my doctorate. Yeah.
No.
Well, I've been trying to
work. Is a doctorate like a big?
I've been trying to write for the last.
It's a book, right? You have to write a book.
Yeah. So the writing part is taking a long time, right? And it's because I'm not motivated. Well, it's just hard to but I care about education. I care about the role it plays in a society, especially anytime you hear about something terrible, you think, how could it have been different if we could get our schools together,
gun reform.
Yeah.
But also in Thailand, is that even a?
But there's other issues, and every country has issues, right?
Yeah.
So you think about just even attention to mental health, or even just the acceptance of diversities or different families, or that kind of prejudice is everywhere.
Yeah,
and you just think if schools could get their acts together, or educators, we could do a better job. But I think that kind of thinking has caused the burnout. Because sometimes, when you work in a school, you work with a lot of kids and families, and I've always felt that working with families is important, necessary. You can't just work with a kid. It's frustrating when you feel like you care more about the child than their parents. And as a person in their mid-40s that's decided not to have their own children, I feel like, why did you choose to bring life into the world when you are not capable or willing to do the work that it takes to raise them into being a functioning and empathic human being?
Wow.
So I get tired. So I'm tired.
Yeah.
And it's because I take things too seriously.
Yeah. It's because you care.
Well, but
It's because you care.
I do care, but I think that's the thing that, the work that people have to do is to care about the work. You brought up Black Lives Matter, any kind of thing. It's okay to care, but you also have to know not to be so empathic and care that it's
depleting you.
Correct.
Well, and that's a universal thing that we talk about on this podcast, especially with the business that I'm in.
Yeah.
And the fact that I do not know how to kind of separate to have that boundary with my clients.
Yeah.
Because again, same thing as you're saying these about your students, I feel the same way about families that I work with.
Yeah.
And also how much I end up caring about my couple
Right.
or caring about my client. And again, 9 out of 10 times, I'm the only one that cares
Yeah.
that deeply about that specific item.
Yeah.
And so it's been, and now I'm kind of being like, oh my God, we are so similar, and we're in very similar situations where whenever I talk about like being exhausted or not wanting to be a planner for the rest of my life, it has nothing to do with not loving what I'm doing.
Right.
But it is depleting me.
Well, it's the toll that it takes on you.
Yes, and I look back on the history of my life and where I fell into the addiction and all these different things that now I'm finally finding the time or allowing myself to have the time to take care of myself. For so many years, I just gave and gave and gave, and now I'm like making up for all these deficits that I have in my soul. Like, do you think you were doing the same thing, or were you always able to kind of still, at the end of the day, add that boundary and say like, okay, this is my job, this is the extent I can care, and I have to still take care of myself?
I think I've learned to do it better, but I don't think it's 100%.
Yeah.
Obviously when I taught here in public schools, it was different because you were like, if I didn't pick these kids up to take them to the winter concert, they couldn't go and perform in the choir that they'd been practicing for weeks. It felt more, like when I think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you're like the food, shelter, water.
What's that?
So like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is like, it's a pyramid, right? At the bottom, it's like food, shelter, water, like things that you have to have settled before you think about the other things. And at the very top is like, there's different pyramids, but it's like self-realization or self-actualization or fulfillment you see at the top of the pyramid. And you can't have all those until you take care of each of the steps on the hierarchy of needs. So when you move to a new country, the advice I always give is like, take care of the food, shelter, water, and Wi-Fi. And, then find friends or, and it's
Make a
like,
community.
yeah, you have to do those things before you can, work your way to that the top of the pyramid. But like, I think when I worked in public schools, it felt like that was more basic needs that I was helping kids with or families with because they were in a less privileged situation. Working in private schools, you're like, I'm busting my butt, trying to make sure kids say thank you to the people in the cafeteria when, and I know it's a little thing, but it bothers me that like,
but they're not, but they're not learning that at home.
Yeah. And in Thailand, the community that I work with now, each kid has a nanny, and then the family has drivers. They have a staff of people.
Wow.
And that bothers me even more that they can't say thank you to the people in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
And the people who clean up after them. And so I just start to think like, why am I getting so upset and annoyed at this?
Yeah.
Because then my thinking starts to become, well, that's wrong with society these days, and like, it's their education. And I think that, and the reason why I care that I want to still be in education is like, like you're talking about taking care of yourself and setting those boundaries because you have to set those boundaries because no one else is going to set them, right?
No.
We should have been taught that.
And so this is the thing is I go back and forth a lot about how much I wish I finished school.
Yeah.
Because I always have these fears in my mind about what discipline it would have taught me to finish school. Because again, I never finished school, so there's always this like link to like, well, if I had finished school, would have I learned a little bit more about those things? But then as I talk to my friends that have all graduated, have masters, like are PhDs, whatever, everyone kind of continues to tell me that that's not.
No, you don't learn discipline. You clearly have discipline.
Yeah.
Like you have your own business. Like you're a functioning adult.
Yeah.
I think we're taught that school is the only place we learn discipline.
Yeah.
And I think, like, for me, coming from, like, Asian American parents who immigrated to America, I learned discipline from them.
Yeah.
Right? And the value of hard work and responsibility and things like that. What I didn't learn is how to, like...
take care of yourself.
Yeah.
That's the part that I think, and maybe that's also the link of being Asian.
Yeah.
Having Asian immigrant parents.
Yeah.
Is... they didn't have the bandwidth to do it. They didn't have the resources. Just like you said in that pyramid, they were too busy working on food, shelter, and water.
My parents had to, I have two brothers.
Yeah.
They had to raise 3 kids and make sure that we didn't end up, we knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
we probably still don't know what we're doing. But
I mean, does anybody, honestly?
I think people who say they do
Yeah. It
are
does make
lying.
me feel, I mean, I'm not going to lie. It does make me feel better knowing that a principal feels burned out.
And I think that's the thing is that everybody is feeling like I am not the only like person that feels
course.
this way.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I just think like I need a break before I start to resent the work that I care so much about.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
I mean, it's a passion and I think that's something too that happens, especially in the creative field.
Right.
It's like your passion. Like when we did that charity event in 2009, like I was so excited to be a part of something, to give back, but to also like create an experience, an event for people, and also celebrate one of your good friends who passed.
Yeah.
And so like I realized that energy is gone. Like that, the joys, I still get joys in what I do, but it does feel like work versus before it felt like pure.
And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think, and I think that it's okay to, like, if I approached every school year with the same enthusiasm as I did the very first time I started teaching, it'd be weird, right? Like I couldn't keep that up.
Yeah.
I think what I haven't been able to do is like fill up the rest of what fulfills me in life
outside of
work,
job,
right?
Yeah.
So I think, it's not, I was going to say quarter life crisis, but it's not.
Well,
it's midlife crisis.
But maybe that makes sense because you're saying this pyramid is that you have to work through all these stuff. So now you're getting to that top level.
Right.
So, I mean, and again, if you think about the nature of even a pyramid in the sense that it's work to get to the top of this mountain, I think that's maybe where we're at now is that we have the ability and the, I mean, again, it's a privilege to be able to even take the time to say, okay, well, what do we want now?
Well, and my mom was always like, you guys have so much choice in your life, and I'm like, that's what's burning us out, Mom. Like it's the choice, and I think like, but now, and I think when you're younger and earlier in your career, you're really trying to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And you're trying to prove to others, but also to yourself that like, this is a good career path.
Yeah.
You're good at what you do.
Yeah.
I no longer feel the need to continue to work and bust my ass to convince myself that I'm a good educator or I'm a good leader.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
But the other thing about being a leader that's hard is that I also have to model what I want with my team. And I'm finding it incredibly hard to tell people like, hey, stop checking your emails after, like when you will leave campus, like we don't work in a life and death job. So there's really no need for you to be checking your emails late at night to respond to parents to say that, oh, Johnny can't swim tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's not that time sensitive, you know? And so, I've always made it a point to, like, I still work outside of hours, but I'll never send emails. I'll like hold them all.
Yeah.
Send
later.
They all send later at 7 o'clock, because
Yeah.
that's our start time. But it becomes hard to tell, like, my team, they're like, I'm feeling really burnt out, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, yeah, well, find time for yourself. You have to make yourself a priority. You have to do this. What is it that brings you joy and fulfillment? And every time I'm asking these questions, I'm like, who the hell is, like, doing it for me?
Yeah.
Right? And so, because that's what principals do. That's what principals that I would like to be would do. Walk around.
Yeah.
Check in if someone's not having a good day or if someone's going through a tough time in their lives, or guess what? COVID, it's hard.
Yeah.
You want a school environment where the adults also are taken care of as well.
Yeah.
And, I play an important role in that, I hope. But it's hard to do that when you yourself, like, like, what is it that I'm doing?
But that's exactly, I think, how a lot of even, like, I mean, I feel that definitely because, again, my job is to perfect and refine something. Yeah. So I'm constantly having
present
to present it in this beautiful experience and blah, blah. But it's like I'm also grieving inside because I'm broken and all the things. So I think that's maybe what the pandemic has allowed for everybody is that we've all had the moment to stop, and now we're in this position.
We're burnt out.
Yeah. But it's an exciting conversation to have, and I think it's really it's actually exciting for me to hear that with you because I feel like I have never heard you say that. I've never really heard you say like, or even like look into it enough to even now not know. So I think it's kind of exciting for you.
Well, but it's scary. So this is what I was trying to tell you earlier when you told me to stop talking and save it for the podcast. I think one of the things that's been hard is, so before I left for summer vacation, so
Yeah.
I live in a world where I had a summer vacation, and before I left, one of the school investors was like, I want you to really think about, because I've told them I'm resigning after the next academic year, and they were like, we really want you to think about that, reconsider it. Well, and I was like, well, first of all, you should never talk to any educator about making life decisions in June.
Yeah.
You're burnt. Like, even if you weren't already burnt out, you're
Yeah.
burnt out in June. You're ready for the summer. And, but, like my first instinct was to feel good that they wanted me to stay. Like, I felt wanted.
Yeah.
Right? And then, but I was like, but no, I've like made this decision to take time for myself. I don't know what that time's going to look like.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to sustain myself, but it's scary to think about going from like employed and comfortable
Yeah.
to, I don't know, what am I going to do? And I know we talked about I was going to work at Target, but I realized I don't think I can work at Target.
I mean, you were like falsely saying how life.
Yeah.
At that time, it was an interesting conversation. I think you were buzzed.
But I wasn't.
We were buzzed off of noodles.
Shabu shabu.
Shabu shabu. Okay. Okay. So, what do you think? Okay, do we have time for this? What's our timing at right now?
Did you start it?
What was that?
Did you start the time?
I did, but it's already blinking red. But I have a few questions I want.
How much time's left, does it say?
Well, it's at 0 now.
Let me check.
Will you check? I think we're gonna have to break one more time because I do want to ask a few more questions.
Yeah, we got time.
Are we out of time? How much time?
Like 2 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll talk really fast.
As I typically ask on every episode, what do you think is your biggest? Actually, let me ask 2 questions.
In 2 minutes?
Mr. Feeney,
Yes, from Boy Meets World.
good principal, bad principal.
He cared about the kids.
Is
Good
that
principal.
you? Are you Miss Feeney?
He cared about the kids and he was firm with people.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. He built relationships. I don't know how his relationships with the teachers
Yeah.
were.
Hopefully he's not problematic either, but he died. I think he died this year, right?
Oh,
He died.
really? And he wore sweater vests.
Yeah, Boy Meets World. Check it out, Mr.
Yeah.
Feeney. Okay, number 2. What is your biggest misconception?
About myself?
Yes.
Oh, I know what it is.
Yes.
I think because I'm loud, people think I'm fairly outgoing. People think I'm an extrovert. I am not.
Yeah. And I learned you do not like hugging.
I'm not a hugger. No.
Yes. But you hug me every time.
Well, okay. Cherish it.
Okay, last question. What do you love about yourself?
I didn't know you were going to ask me this. I mean, it's funny that I said I'm not an extrovert. I do think I have good relationships with people.
Yeah.
And I think that being an introvert and being able to like have good relations and connections with people.
Yeah.
That's an accomplishment. I think I have to give myself props for.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do.
I do have to say I have loved every conversation we've had ever from like our Facebook chats.
Yeah.
And you were so present for me during the pandemic, even though we had.
I was also home and on a different time
I know,
zone.
but I just want to thank you for that. And I am so grateful that you came on the podcast today.
It's my first podcast.
I know, yay!
I don't know what that means. Do I have a career in podcasting
Maybe.
now?
I mean, you're going to start getting into voiceover, so who knows?
Yeah, well, listen.
You can add this to your reel.
I'll have to come back to the follow-up show when I
Yes.
figure out what I'm going to do about my burnout.
Yes, we
When I have the
will
solution.
be eager and willing to know
Like,
what you're doing now.
How to overcome burnout for educators.
Yes,
There you go.
there we go.
I'm writing a book.
Well, thank you so much again for coming, and I'll.
That's probably made the sound all my
No, it's fine. We like it.
Sorry.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Ooh, wait, don't go yet. Make sure you subscribe and like and follow and transfer me via Venmo. Thanks for listening.